On the morning of August 1st, 1966, shots ring out from the observation deck of the clock tower on the University of Texas campus. It marks the infamous beginning of the modern era of mass shootings in America.
I'm Sarah Ferris, true crime podcaster.
And I'm Katherine Schweit, the former head of the FBI's active shooter program.
And you're listening to Stop the Killing. Hi, Katherine. Welcome to another episode of Stop the Killing. And this one is kind of a special one because it is the last episode in season 4, which has been epically long. It's ridiculous.
I know. Everybody who watches television, they're like, oh, I can't wait. The next 8 episodes are dropping on that. Or in our case, 60.
Exactly. I just looked back and it was like, I think we started season 4 back in May of 2023. And as we record this, it's June 2024. So
that's why we're so tired.
It is. We need a break. We do need a break. One of the reasons that we've kept going so long, I think, is because we have got such a loyal base of Patreon supporters, and we would love if you are on the fence to join us so that we can keep doing this, because we're going to talk a little bit about the wins that we've had over this season in this episode coming up, and that wouldn't be possible without the support of our Patreons. So please, if you are on the fence, or if you're one of our free subscribers and you're thinking, oh, maybe just even want to do it for a month or whatever, it all counts and we appreciate every bit of it.
You know, we do listener questions that come from Patreons, and I love doing those. And sometimes they're the toughest questions we get asked.
True.
And our answers are for them. And I did one recently that, I hope I didn't make the listener angry when I answered. But I feel like the questions that we can answer like that with our listeners, they're devoted to stopping the killing, and they're tough enough to have tough conversations with. And that's what I guess I love about our audience. And I want you to ask us questions and listen to the answers and disagree with them and ask us more and, come on and talk about it and tell us what your situation is and why you think what you're hearing maybe isn't right. I mean, because we don't have all the answers, but I love that the people who are in our community are a community that wants to change this world in terms of firearms violence. I love that about our community.
I know, we are very lucky. And, talking of Patreons, I'm going to give a few shout outs in a minute to our new Patreons. But I wanted to also say I had the most amazing experience because I've recently come back from CrimeCon in Nashville, which you couldn't make it this year. But honestly,
I could not. I had to go to LA.
You. I missed you. But the good news is that you're going to be in London with me in September. So if you want to go, don't forget there is links in the show notes. And if you use, there's a discount code in there, my last name, which is well worth using. But we would love to see you there.
In case you want to know what her last name is.
Ferris. Like the wheel.
Ferris.
Yeah, exactly. Like the wheel.
Flight tickets from the States are going down.
Oh,
going down. Yeah, going down to London. So if you want to pop over to London, I'm going to be there. We're going to have so much fun.
So Colin Sutton will be there, who was in an episode from the Real Manhunter series. Then
Jackie.
We've got Jackie Moulton. Oh my God, I love Jackie Moulton. She's such a boss.
Well, I think Jackie and I are going to do a piece together at CrimeCon. Come and see us. It's going to be so fun.
It will be. I mean, can you imagine? The thing I love about that is you've got these 2 women in law enforcement that have literally, smashing glass ceilings left, right, and center, and 2 different, like she was in the Met Police, you were in the FBI. I mean, I just love that. I love those stories. So I'll be getting the popcorn out and listening because it's going to be fascinating for sure.
It'll be fun. It'll be fun. All your favorite podcast people will be there too. So that's kind of fun.
Exactly.
Yeah, the speakers list is huge and we have so much fun when we're there. I went last year for my first time. Oh my God, what a riot.
I know. And it is fun. It's fun. But also I have to say, like, it's such a roller coaster of emotions when you're there, because you can be 1 minute you're talking to somebody who's a listener I don't know, like my other podcasts, like Conning the Con and telling you a con story, and they share their stories. But then the next minute you are, talking with someone who's lost a loved one and,
Right.
wants
I
you
just
share
wanted
their
to tell you my
story.
sister was killed. I wanted to tell
Oh,
you I lost my dad to gun violence.
exactly.
It's gut-wrenching.
It's gut-wrenching, but they are often the people that are there to like, okay, how can I make a difference? Or how can I connect with the right people? Because there's always loads of advocates there.
Yeah, they're using the energy from their loss to make the world a better place. And I love that.
Yeah. I mean, there's so much good stuff that comes out of CrimeCon. I can't recommend it enough. And London is very special because it's a little bit more intimate. You get to spend so much more time with all the speakers and the podcasts as well. So
and Nashville was fun though, right?
Oh, Nashville was wild, absolutely wild. Yeah, I didn't know what to expect. I was not a country music fan, so I thought, well, this is going to be weird. But I did spend one evening down the Broadway, which is where all the cacophony of music is. It was fabulous. So Nashville itself really over-delivered. I was so excited to be there. Yeah. I described it when I got home as like a giant stag and hen party in Bristol, or one of the mean streets of England, small town, but not ironically. Everybody was really wearing cowboy hats and boots, and they looked freaking amazing. I was like, I've got to give me some.
It is not a movie set. They wear those.
Not a movie set. No. But that was Nashville itself. The CrimeCon was phenomenal. The speakers they had were incredible. But one of the best things is meeting the listeners. And in fact, you missed out this time because we actually met. I know she was gutted to miss you as well. I got to meet one of our Patreons for the first time in person. Jackie. I know. She wished she'd been there too, but don't worry. Next year,
sorry, Jackie. I'm sorry, Jackie. This is my personal apology to you. I had to go to LA. I was meeting with the Entertainment Industries Council. I'm talking about guns and movies and television. So
don't peak too soon, because we're going to be talking about that in the Patreon.
More on that later. Right.
Yeah, exactly. Pin in that one. But so we got to meet Jackie Bradstone, who was absolutely just a joy to meet. And Jackie, because she is a very special Patreon to me, because I've met her, also had sent in a request for a certain case, and I wanted to just run it by you, Katherine, because you're going to have to do the research on it. Let me just shuffle through my papers here. Sorry for that.
That's my job. That's my job, Jackie. You asked for it. I'll do it.
She sent me a message a while ago saying, it looks like a potential school shooting averted, according to the Washington Post. Wooten High School in Montgomery County, MD. What's MD?
Mm-hmm.
What's that?
Maryland.
Mm-hmm. Okay, there you go. There was leakage, reporting to authorities, and arrest made. Scary, of course, but it seems like the right actions were taken. I would love to hear your take on it when the time is right. So, Jackie, message to you. We'll let you know when the time's right. We will
message received. Jackie,
yeah.
Message received. That will be the first or second thing we do next season.
Oh, wow. Her mouth's writing checks. Her body's not going to be able to cash. Don't quote us on when it will come. I'll let you know when it's coming out, Jackie.
I will crack the whip on Sarah. I'm like, this is it. This is it. This is it.
Now, so let me also give a little shout out to the new Patreons. We've got Angela Burt and Renee Hawes. Thank you so much for joining. And then we've also got Tian, Heidi Robertson, Owen, Erin, Kathy, Sandy Lambert, and Caitlin D, who have all joined as well. And so appreciated.
Wait, I like that. I like that you're going to Patreon and signing up. I will say, I wasn't going to say this, but can I say something about podcasting?
I'm scared what you're going to say, but do it.
I guess this is maybe the appropriate time to say it. I debated this. You don't want to hear this. I debated this past year. You don't know this, but I thought maybe I should stop doing the podcast.
Is that going to be the new title? Stop the podcast.
Stop. It takes so much time.
I know.
And it's so much time. It's so much work. It sucks up a ton of time because we just do it because we think it's important. And there's not really any financial.
Yeah.
There's nobody on the platform paying us a salary or something like that.
No, we're an independent podcast.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not only the time, it's all the extra stuff.
Yeah.
So anyway, that's my little whine part about it. So I did think about maybe I should stop doing the podcast because I would gain a zillion hours of a year.
I mean, listen, I go through the same thing all the time. I think we'll get to the reasons later on in this episode why, what keeps us hooked in, which is some of those wins that we've had over this, particularly this season that has kept me going anyway.
Well,
but tell me, are we in? Are we definitely doing season 5? Oh my God. Listeners.
Yes. All right. Yes. I'm committing to season 5.
All right.
Yes, definitely. I'll commit to season 5 for sure. Because it's important to do this because first of all, podcasts are free. And I say that all the time. Every time I speak, every time I'm out in public, I always say podcasts are free. I mean, I grew up pretty poor. Plenty of people don't have money. And I think it's really important that everybody gets the message and they don't have the encumberment. Ooh, I made that word up, I think. They're not encumbered. Sorry, grammar teachers from high school. They don't have to always be encumbered by paying for information. I think it's, accurate information. I'm going to tell you what I think is accurate based on research, based on legal information, based on facts, straight stories, non-political. That's my goal. It's really important for me to share that information with as broad of audience as I can, and the podcast allows me to do that. And so, all right, I'm in for season 5.
And she says, now I'm worried. Well, let's
We've done a couple hundred episodes. So
I know, that's true.
It's not like we're not doing this work. We've done a lot, and I want to keep doing it. And I will tell you, when the shootings start going away in the United States, I'll be very happy to walk away from the podcast.
Yeah, me too. Me too. Not just in the US either, just everywhere.
Right.
Would be nice.
I mean, that's it. We're seeing them more in other countries, and that makes me even more nervous. They're increasing in other countries, in countries that aren't prepared for it.
That's right. Well, talking of Patreon and all the supporters that as, part of the way that we fuel the podcast, one of the things that we're going to do is make sure that our Patreon supporters and our Apple subscribers have still got content each week. We're going to do a bite-sized chunk kind of series that will be out same time, same place for you on Patreon and Apple. So stay tuned for that. There's going to be some really interesting topics in there as well. Catherine,
summer break for us.
No. We're doing a bit of a binge recording, so we can hopefully have a bit of a summer break. Can you give me a summary of what we've got coming up in the bite-sized chunks that the listeners on Apple subscriptions and Patreon will be hearing over the next couple of weeks?
Well, one of the things that they'll get a chance to hear is kind of the little inside baseball, which I know I say too much, but little, inside story about I'm working in Hollywood. One of the reasons why I couldn't be in Nashville is I was in Hollywood meeting with the Entertainment Industries Council. We're talking about guns in the movies and television and what we can do about those in streaming services. So I want to talk about that.
And then we've got the listener questions. So if you've got listener questions that you want answered, please send them in. And I'm trying to convince Catherine, and I don't know that she's really convinced on this. So if you want to hear this, maybe send in a few kind of, yes, Catherine, please do this. But I think that would be great if there is any appetite out there for like a 5-minute weekly roundup of Catherine's, just of what's going on and what she's noticed over the week as just a Patreon and Apple subscriber exclusive. Let me know and I'll see if I can twist her arm.
Oh, yeah. We've talked about that a little bit before. You're just trying to make me work more, I think, Sarah.
So there we go. I need some support if that's what people want. If not, hey, take a day off.
Yeah. How can they ask that? How can they answer that question?
They can just message us on Instagram or on any of the links in the show notes below.
Okay. And for Instagram address?
It's Stop the Killing Stories.
And
there
then
you go.
Some people don't Instagram.
Then if you're on Patreon, you can hit the chat button on Patreon and just send a direct message that way. Or you can send an email via either Catherine's website, which is katherineschweit.com, or my website, sarahferrismedia.com, and we will definitely make sure that happens. One other thing I wanted to mention before we move on to the guts of this episode, which is a sort of a look back on season 4, is I just got a message through that you haven't heard from one of our Patreons, our new Patreons, Angela Burt. And I think you'll like this. This is a nice little message.
Angela. What's up?
So she said, "Hey, I'm a threat analyst for the DoD." I figured that was Department of Defense. Thank you.
Right.
I get a point.
Yay.
Yeah. So she's a threat analyst for the Department of Defense and learning so much from your podcasts. You help me.
Oh, yay.
I know, isn't that cool? You help me assess risk better and build more meaningful mitigation strategies for soldiers in crisis. We are working to keep them off the critical pathway to violence, and your analysis is incredibly helpful.
Oh my God.
Catherine's gasping. She's really quite moved by that. If you can't see her face, which I can.
Wow.
Isn't that cool?
I'm kind of tearing up.
I know.
Did you write that because you want me to do another season?
Yeah. Now, could you just promise me you're doing season 6? No, I didn't do that. And those are the kind of people that are in our Patreon community, people that are doing this and every day making a difference. So thank you, Angela.
Thank you, Angela. That is so kind of you to say that we helped you out in your job and you help our soldiers, manage their stress and deal with what they have to deal with every day.
Well, that leads nicely on to having a look back at the episodes in season 4 that have kind of stuck with us.
So many.
I know, so many, but I'm going to just try and keep us on maybe 3 episodes that I want to point people to that might have just landed on Stop the Killing recently because we've had a lot of new subscribers.
3, but there's the Scottish murderers, and then there's the guy who talked about training kids in schools, and then there's the what do you mean?
I know.
3. Okay.
Well, we might have to go off 3. We'll see. I start with 3 and we'll see where we end up.
Okay.
But I think what I'd like to do is if you are new to the podcast and you've got some episodes to go, oh, these ones we really recommend. There's some really great stuff in them. And I think following on from Angela's, obviously the reason that we keep driving at this message of Stop the Killing and feel like we've had some real wins this season, I don't think we can start with the season review without mentioning the episode about the averted school shooting.
Yes, I think that is very fair. The assistant vice principal of the school contacted us to say they prevented a shooting from happening in their school.
Exactly. And
it's crazy.
I know, absolutely crazy. I just dove back into my files there just so I could give the exact episode because I know we did 2 episodes on it. So if you start, I think, at episode 29, I'm not sure if that's the one. Season 4, exactly. The averted school shooting. That was incredible, actually, because when we got the message from the assistant principal, and she'd messaged us and told us about how it had all come about and that they'd managed to actually stop a child who had a plan and access to weapons from carrying out that attack. You then said, "Oh, I'll see if I can reach out to her." And I thought, there's no way she's going to come on the podcast. But she did. Katherine Schweit asks, she gets. So
she did.
And she was just like, honestly, it was such a palpable episode when she was talking about it. It really, I felt like I was in the moment with her, just kind of going, oh my goodness, you could really feel things unfold.
Yeah. And, we have people on who have been very significant in this world that we work in, like Frank DeAngelis, who was the principal at Columbine High School. And we're all just civilians trying to make a difference and make the world a safer place. And when you listen to somebody like the vice principal talk about how this came about, what struck me is, a young girl in the school heard something. She mentioned it to her mom. The mom mentioned it to the school people right away. I mean, they were able to make this connection that we talk about doing all the time.
Oh, yeah.
And I think the most important thing for me was that when she first messaged us at the end of her message, when she talked about how this boy was going to do this shooting, she said, and we were able to get him the help that he needed.
I know. I was retelling that story at CrimeCon in Nashville, and every time I'd well up thinking about how that child had been saved along with the entire community of that school. So yeah, really impactful. So if you are listening,
so that's a great episodes, 2 episodes.
Definitely. So that is episode 29 in season 4, the averted school shooting. And I'm going to put the links in the show notes below as well to the ones that we talk about today, because I just want some more work to do for myself.
Yes, please do.
Keep me off the streets. Exactly.
Could you guys come up with some more things that Sarah could do? Because she needs a few more things to do.
I got nothing to do. Just as we were talking about Frank then, we've done episodes with Frank over, I think, season 2, maybe even season 3, and he's also in season 4. In season 4, he is in episode 7, and we're talking to Frank there as well. And every conversation with Frank is insightful and not to be missed.
You know, the reason that I asked Frank to come back on in the season was I wanted him to talk about what it's like to deal with other people, their schools. You know, a school that has a shooting that, of course, the personnel think they'll never have a shooting. And he helps people because he can and because he's a wonderful person.
Yeah.
And it's kind of like his full-time job, you know.
Being a wonderful person, full-time job.
Yeah, that's really Frank, for sure.
Well, we did definitely a lot on the Oxford school shooting because that case was unfolding, and we've done plenty of bonus episodes on that. So if you want to go back and start at the beginning of the Oxford school shooting episodes.
When Oxford first happened, we wanted to talk about it like we would talk about an incident, to say, okay, well, how could this shooting have been avoided, and what happened, and how do people recover? But really what we, of course, came to learn through the season is what happens in a criminal action. A lot of times we have shooters who you don't have the opportunity to charge. But the Oxford case had a shooter and parents and fugitives and trials. And it was like the case that just kept going and on for a reason, and completely destroyed a family.
Absolutely. Every family member, as far as I know, I think there were only one child. Correct me if I'm wrong.
There's a boy in prison for life.
Yeah.
And parents who are both in prison. They're all in separate prisons.
Unbelievable.
And that shooting itself, it's hard to believe how long ago it happened. But it was important to me. That's the boring lawyer in me. But a lot of times we hear a news story about a shooting and then we never hear anything else again. And it was really important to me that we follow a case so that you can learn what's good and what's bad, what happens and what doesn't. And even talk about when people say, well, you should hold the parents accountable. You want to know what it's like to hold parents accountable and what does work and what doesn't work? Listen to the Oxford episode. Listen to the episodes about the child in Virginia who shot his teacher. And he was a very, very young child.
The 6-year-old. That's the Rich Neck Elementary or Reich Neck Elementary School.
I think Reich Neck, I think it's.
Yeah. Reich Neck, yeah. Excuse my pronunciation. That one's episode 3 in season 4. And that was like unbelievable. And am I right remembering that was the case where they didn't believe that a 6-year-old could fit a gun in the shorts? And that's why they didn't check the... Yeah, I mean,
the pocket of his pants. And so
unbelievable.
So they didn't search him.
Yeah.
And the accountability for the school officials and the teacher who was shot in her, and then her first concern was for the safety of the other kids in the classroom. She's shot and she's getting other kids out of the classroom. And it really speaks to, if you're a gun owner, as I am, where's your gun? What are you doing with it? Where are your guns? How locked up are they? Who has access to them?
Yeah.
And the idea of, which I know in season 5 coming up, I'm not sure exactly when, in season 5, I'd really like to have the opportunity to talk more and more about the teenage brain and
oh, great. I'm already invested.
Yeah, because our kids appear so adult.
Yeah.
But the brain inside their head is not developed.
I just didn't know how you were going to finish that sentence when you paused there for a minute, when you go, because they're so, and in my head, I was thinking, yeah, I've got some teenagers in my house that I could fill that blank with.
No. It's easy to forget when you're talking to your teen, as you know, because you have them, that they don't reason like an adult because their brain isn't developed that way. All right, well, we'll talk about that.
Yeah, don't get too far down that rabbit hole. Now, just to go back to the Oxford school shooting episodes, I will link them in the show notes, as I've said, but in season 4, there is 2 excellent episodes, episode number 52 and episode number 53, and they are called Under the Radar. And in that one, we dive into the report. And I think the second one, chilling. Some of the stuff that came out of his school reports in terms of the report that was done afterwards was just really chilling, lots of cries for help. And when we talk about those hurdles to stop people on a pathway to violence, very significantly represented in
leakage.
Leakage. Excellent 2 episodes for sure.
It was a year-long plus season, and so much occurred. And there was even Uvalde follow-up, when an after action comes out, what does it say? What does it really mean? Does it really help a community? So try to share that information. And then we did that in season 4.
That's right. It is episode 48, the Uvalde shooting, a comprehensive analysis. So that was after the report came out that we did that episode. So there you go. All right. Now, a lot of these that we're bringing up are school shootings, but we didn't just do school shootings. There were so many other cases that we covered. The Oslo shooting that we covered, which was a 2-parter, which, those international cases really do put things in perspective in terms of it's not just an American problem. And so
I think too, different solutions.
Right.
I think different challenges and advantages. When I worked on the Christchurch report this past year for the country, a universal law enforcement and fire organization in that country, the United States doesn't have that. In some ways, when I work on something that's overseas, it's fascinating because they do have, I want to say, it's a cheap way of saying it, but like more coordinated, they have a national police and fire that works together that pours down into local. US isn't like that. So in some ways, it's great to have that accountability. It's great to have that, the ability to communicate up and down the line. Centralized.
Yeah,
Thank
absolutely.
You. Centralized, right. So that's nice. I like that. And Oslo, I think, is a good example of that.
Absolutely. And Oslo was a case that I think people know the name. There was a shooting in Oslo, that it was politically motivated, but actually there was some things in there that I had completely not remembered. And that was the fact that it was a 2-part incident where we had a bombing first and then the horrific tragedy that happened on the island. That is episode 45 and 46 in season 4 called Anatomy of Terror. Yeah.
And it's good warning signs too about how he got onto the island and, his scam to why he did another violent act first, and the kinds of things that, how you can be an upstander, you can be a participant in preventing violence by being the nudgy neighbor. And
yes,
I think that's okay.
I think what a great term, nudgy neighbor. Maybe I have to get that as my bumper sticker. The nudgy neighbor. Because the thing that did resonate with me about that is he was doing so much preparation before this, and there was no hurdle put in place, as we say again, kind of that tripped him up at any stage. So that was the lesson that I took away from that. Nudgy neighbor.
I like it. Next season, because I've already committed to season 5, is I'm going to do a whole episode or maybe 2 on just averted attacks.
I love that because that'll feel really like there's hope. I think when you hear an averted attack story, you're like, yeah, we can make some difference here.
It'll give you opportunities to see, I could have done that. I might have done that.
Exactly. Well, we can start with the case that Jackie Bradston suggested, the Wooten one.
There you go.
In Maryland. So thanks, Jackie. Okay, I'm going to give you maybe one more because I know this episode is full of suggestions and I just want to sort of nudge you in some directions if you're listening now. This is one of them that really resonated. Again, it's a school one, but honestly, there are plenty that are not school related ones. episode I wanted to talk about was episode 54, called Who's Left Out When Disaster Strikes. Now, do you know the one I mean?
A little bit, yeah. Go ahead,
Yeah.
tell the listeners about it.
Yeah, so it is a episode that we had a guest on called Stefan, and forgive me, Stefan, but I can't remember how to pronounce your last name. It's spelled Bjes, and I'm not even going to attempt to ruin that for you. But he was an incredible guest, and he'd worked in law enforcement, but he also had 2 children that had autism. Am I right? Was it autism?
Mm-hmm. Correct.
Yeah. And really just like shone this massive bright light on something that I hadn't thought of before when we're talking about school drills and who gets left out. So that whole thought process behind people that if you've got a child that does have some special needs that might be, triggered by loud noises or sirens, that kind of thing, a lot of parents might opt them out of a planned active shooter training drill in classrooms. And what he was talking about really was like, oh my goodness, what that is one of the worst things that you can do, not just for the child, but for the ability for the teachers to protect your child. That's what I came away from that episode thinking about.
Yeah, and I think that one of the things that for me, he came on saying, well, my boys, they have these needs and we know how to deal with them. And I thought so many people I've heard say, well, in our school district, we can opt out. If we think that would be too traumatic for our child, we opt out.
Yeah.
What he shared with me that you were just referencing, that to me was so significant, is you are not giving the school personnel the ability to understand how to deal with your child in an emergency, whether it is a shooting or tornado drill, a fire drill. I mean, in his case, he had a child who had sound issues, and they had a system in place that included sound canceling headphones. The teachers, their job is they want to be there for your child. Give the teachers a chance to do that. Also, the idea that the school needs to have, maybe in that classroom, the school needs to have somebody who, in an emergency, another adult who runs into that classroom specifically to help. We talked about some things like that. So I think that was a fascinating episode. And I'm sure there are plenty of our listeners who have kids or grandkids who know people who are in that situation. And there's so much to explore. And I think we put things in the show notes on that. And I love that idea. And
yeah,
I want to say something completely different.
Buckle up.
Because it reminded me of something that, again, another person who, but this is, you don't know this, but one of the people who I want to ask if she'll come on I shouldn't probably give her name. Okay, I'll give her name. Katherine Manning.
Oh,
no
okay.
pressure, Katherine. Katherine Manning, she wrote The Empathetic Workplace. She talks about having a good work environment and how to create a good work environment. And we know that for every one school shooting, there are 2 in places of business.
Yeah.
So I wanted to share, even if you're listening because you have a kid in school, well, that's great. But you go to work every day, or your spouse or your partner goes to work every day. Somebody's working every day, whether you're working at home or whether you're working in a building. You go into the dentist's office, you go into the law office, you go to the grocery store, you go to the mall, to the big box store. All of those are places of employment where shootings happen too. And understanding how to work with customers, understanding how to work with workmates. That's all great. And I thought Katherine would be great to talk about that. So season 5, that's my hope.
I love that.
I better call her and let her know.
Yeah, by the way.
I haven't told her.
She's been outed on the show as having to come on. Well, I think there's a lot of suggestions there. I'm just going to give you a few headline ones without going into them too much, just so if you're thinking, oh, it's all school shootings or whatever, let me just tell you. We have got Frank Figliuzzi, who is the former assistant director of the FBI, and his episode was really forward-thinking in terms of, we talked about AI, we even went backwards in history and talked about the anthrax case, and then we ended up talking about elephants. So that's just it was around the world, that one. It's called Anthrax, Elephants, and AI, and it's episode 57. Really,
Frank Figliuzzi, he's a friend of mine from the FBI. Yeah, he's a great conversationalist. He has so much to share.
Mm-hmm. I really enjoyed that conversation. And then we did an episode on the Aurora Theatre Massacre as well. So there's so much on this season. We hope you've enjoyed it as much as you can enjoy this topic. And when I say enjoyed, I mean feel empowered by the information in there, which is what I do when I come away from these recordings. That's
I want people to feel, I want someone to listen and say, I didn't know that. Oh, that makes me feel good because I knew that.
Yeah.
It makes me feel like I know that's the right way to react, or it gives me confidence to say something to a teacher or a counselor because I'm worried about someone, or to speak to a parent and say, hi, do you have guns in your house? Because, I want my kids to be safe. And I just want to know that if you have them, that while my child is there, they're locked up.
Yeah.
If our podcast gives people an opportunity to think through how to be safer and how to support less firearms violence in the United States and around the world, it's a winner for me.
Me too. Well, looking forward to the next season. We're going to have episodes coming out weekly for the Apple subscribers and for Patreon. So click the show notes if you want to hear those. They will be exclusively for those two channels. And season 5, any other little tidbits about what might be coming up? Anything you've got planned? Because obviously this will be news to me as well, listeners. I've got no idea what she's got planned.
Surprise.
I'm here for the ride.
Well, I want to share, always, every time something occurs, there's always some bad stuff that happens. But I think when the bad stuff happens, I also see what we learn from it. And I can already see some things. We've got an important decision coming out of the Supreme Court that is going to take a little analysis, but it's really fascinating because although we just had a decision out of the Supreme Court on an item, a bump stock, they call it, an item that you can add to a gun, that's a ruling on one thing. But the Supreme Court still has in its pocket and will be releasing very shortly a case that has to do with whether somebody who is convicted of a domestic violence charge has a right to carry a gun. And because right now they don't.
Okay, well, definitely going to be doing an episode on the Patreon. So all of that will be covered in between the seasons. So stay tuned there.
Yeah, definitely. That's one thing about the, news is news, right? It's timely.
Yeah.
And even though we're going to take a break for the season because my brain needs a little break and Sarah's fingers need a little bit of break, we're going to try to keep our, Patreon crew up to date on kind of what's going on. When that Supreme Court decision comes out, we'll cut in and do something on it. So if you're a Patreon, you'll hear it from here first, as they say.
And the other thing I was going to mention, just to round it out, is we love the listener feedback and the questions. In particular, if you have anything to share in terms of successes you've had, or things you've learned, or ways you've implemented them at your work, school, church, whatever, please tell us. That fuels us as well.
That's my favorite part.
Yeah.
It's my 100%. Favorite part.
Yeah. So please keep those coming.
Isn't this the season where we had somebody write in and say, hey, I got my entire school system to set up an anonymous reporting system.
Yes.
Because I heard that they should have it before they go to school. So before I let my kid go to school, I went to the district and said, you must have this. I mean, I love that. I love that moxie. I love it.
We even did a whole episode on that. That was with Emily.
Yeah, I mean, so if anything positive, but I love the questions. I love the feedback. It is my favorite part.
Yeah. And also case suggestions or what you want to hear next, do send them in. If you want to do that, you can click the links in the show notes, head to Instagram and DM me at Stop the Killing Stories, or reach out to us on Patreon through the chat function, or you can go through our websites, katherineschweit.com, sarahferrismedia.com. There is contact forms on both of those. So just get in touch because we love to hear it. And of course, I really want to just say, if you get a chance to please put a 5-star review down on Apple if you're listening there, or whatever platform you're listening. Leaving a 5-star review does help. It helps other people find the podcast, which means that we can get our message out far and wide. And we all want that.
Yeah, it's all getting the message out. That's all we're doing here. I mean, it's a labor of love.
Indeed. Thanks for listening. And if you want to know more, Katherine's book, Stop the Killing, is out now. For more details, go to katherineschweit.com. Please consider also supporting our independently made podcast. It's simple to do. Go to patreon.com/Stop the Killing. And for as little as the price of a latte a month, you can be part of the solution to stop the killing. Patreon rewards range from official do-gooder status to ad-free episodes, autographed books, and opportunities to connect with us directly for your business, school, church, or even just a book club chat. But just knowing that you are part of a movement that has the power to make your community safer, well, that's got to taste better than a skinny cappuccino any day. So please head to patreon.com/Stop the Killing now and polish off your do-gooder halo and make sure to include your name so we can give you a shout out. This podcast is a community podcast production. That's con with an N. If you want more content, then head over to Community Podcast at Instagram, where you'll find trailers on more binge-worthy true crime, like the award-winning podcast Conning the Con. And check out our show notes for all the links mentioned. Finally, if you want one takeaway action that you can do right now that can help make our community safer, please share, rate and review this podcast wherever you listen. Everybody needs to know that they hold the keys to see something and say something. Together, we can stop the killing.
It's one of those things you hope never happens, but you better train for it, because it will happen, and it will happen in places you wouldn't expect. Be ready for it.